Right, welcome to our second lesson on the topic of movement in substances. Now in the last lesson, we've already looked at what diffusion is, and I hope that you remember that it is the net movement of particles from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. And today we'll be looking at osmosis. Osmosis is a bit like diffusion, but it applies only to water particles. Let's start off with a interesting question. So you might have heard that salt is a good preservative. In fact, it was used in ancient times to preserve meats for long periods of time. Now, after this lesson, you should be able to answer why that is so. There is a scientific reason behind it. And it has got something to do with osmosis. So by the end of this lesson, you should know what is osmosis. And in the second part of this lesson, we'll be looking at the effect of osmosis on both plants and animal cells. Following the textbook, these are on pages 36 to 42. Now to start your understanding of osmosis, I'm going to ask you to apply what you know about diffusion to this situation here. Now you can see that there's a partially permeable membrane and that there are two solutions, one on each side. So on the left, we have 5% sucrose solution. 5%, so there's not many sucrose molecules, and there are many water molecules in blue in comparison. And on the right side, we have 15% sucrose solution. A lot more sucrose molecules compared to fewer water molecules. So pause the video for a while and predict, what do you think will happen? Now I hope you had a good time thinking about that question, and hopefully you thought something along the lines of this, that water molecules would move from the 5% solution on the left over to the other side, because the concentration of water molecules on this side is much higher than the other side. And hopefully you also realize that sucrose molecules ought to move from the right side over to the left side because there's a lot higher sucrose concentration on this side. However, hopefully you realize that the sucrose molecules are not able to pass through the partially permeable membrane. They are far too big. So sucrose cannot diffuse, but water diffuses. And it's at this point I want to introduce the word osmosis. See, this diffusion of water molecules, this movement of water molecules, is called osmosis. And furthermore, there are two other terms that I want to introduce you. Now, instead of water concentration, we use the term water potential. So this side on the left has a higher water potential, is less concentrated, and has more water molecules. And the other side, we say that it has a lower water potential compared to this side, as there's fewer water molecules. So 5% sucrose solution has a higher water potential compared to 15% sucrose solution. Alright, so all this water potential stuff can get very confusing, so I just want you to get it right. Now we see here that this 5% sucrose solution, which has more water, has higher water potential. A different way of saying that is that it is less concentrated, right? Not so much sucrose, or that it is more dilute. On the other side here, we could say that this 15% solution has a lower water potential, right? Not so much water. And we say that it is more concentrated, right? More sucrose and less dilute. So questions have different ways of phrasing this, and you need to be comfortable with the different ways. Alright, so as with all processes, osmosis has a definition. And you will have to remember this definition. And in fact, it's very easy scoring of marks. So please take your time, pause the video, write down this definition, and have a good read through it. Alright, so osmosis is the net movement of water molecules from a region of higher water potential to a region of lower water potential across a partially permeable membrane. Now take note of all the underlying parts of this definition because they are essential. So firstly, it is the net movement, not just movement, of water molecules. So it only applies to water. Osmosis is only for water molecules and not for any other particles. Okay, for a region of higher water potential, right? We do not use the word concentration. Okay, please don't say water concentration. Okay, to a region of lower water potential across a partially permeable membrane. This partially permeable membrane is important and always needs to be there for osmosis to take place. So, question, does osmosis require energy? What do you think? Well, the answer is no. Right? It is a passive process and it does not require energy. Okay, what drives osmosis is this difference in water potential on both sides. Okay, there is a water potential gradient. It's a bit like a concentration gradient that drives osmosis. So it doesn't need any energy from outside. It is a passive process. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these very funky osmosis experiments. There are lots of different experiments in osmosis. They love to test you all these things in the papers. It's good to get comfortable with them. So look at this situation first, and I want you to pause the video and think about what will happen. If you're stuck, look at these two questions here. So where's the water potential higher, and how will the water molecules move? So have a think. Alright, so hopefully you had a good thing about that, and you realize that the water potential is higher on this side, the 5% sucrose solution. So therefore, water molecules will move from the 5% solution over to the 15% solution. And what will happen is the water level on the right side will actually increase, while this on the left side will decrease. So you might wonder why the water doesn't keep going in until this level doesn't keep rising. Well, that's something that maybe you should go and find out by yourself, and we can discuss it in class. So a very similar question which you might have encountered in Sec 2 already. So look at this here. There is a whisking tubing. So this is the whisking tubing. And it is not permeable to sugar. So inside we've got the strong sugar solution, and outside we've got the weak sugar solution. So have a pause and think about what will happen. So I hope that you had a good think about that, and you realize that the weak sugar solution has a higher water potential compared to the strong sugar solution. So water molecules will move from the weak sugar solution into the strong sugar solution inside the whisking tubing. And this results in the water level inside this tube rising up, because water moves in, the level moves up. So good job if you got that. Alright, so osmosis is full of fun experiments, and I hope that you'll be looking forward to your practical, which we'll be doing together when we meet up. Okay, in our next lesson, we'll be looking at osmosis in cells. Now, osmosis doesn't just happen in boring glass beakers and whisking tubings. It happens in cells as well. You see, cells have a certain amount of water inside their cytoplasm, and they can be placed into solutions that have higher or lower water potential compared to their cytoplasm. So osmosis can actually take place across this partially permeable cell membrane here. The water can sometimes move out, water can sometimes move in. And we'll stay tuned to what exactly happens in different types of solutions. But before you watch this video, I want you to think about this question. See, in hospitals, we store red blood cells for donation. It's very important. Some people draw blood. I've never done it before. Maybe some of you have. But when you draw the blood, you got to store it. Now think about it. Okay, which solution would you store your red blood cells in? Would you put them in pure water, which is so full of pure goodness? Or would you put it in a solution with some salt inside? Think about this question, and we'll get back to it next time. Till then, take care.